Good morning friends, this is Yagyadev and I am presenting the economy survey analysis. So in earlier 3 chapters we studied about how the pandemic coverage was provided by the government of India in order to provide cure and cushions to the vulnerable sections, MSME and other parts of the economy. In second chapter we saw that how fiscal development is being made. In third chapter we saw how external sectors in terms of balance of payment, balance of trade, forex are doing good. Now in this chapter we will discuss about the monetary measures taken during the pandemic and post-pandemic situation vis-a-vis the RBI and monetary policies, control of CRR, SLR, repo rate, reverse repo rate, and a new term that has been coined as a variable reverse repo rate, VRRR. So starting this chapter, I will say that first we should study about what is call rate. So the definition of call rate says that when there is surplus. So what is call rate? The rate at which one bank lend the money to the other banks at the rate of 1%, and it is done one nightly, like one night one bank has surplus, then it will transfer the money to the other bank. Now what is weighted average call rate? That discussed by economy survey, again very important. Weighted average call rate is the ratio, or it is the rate at which the bank lend to the other bank with vis-a-vis the repo rate and the call rate. So call rate और repo rate के ratio को हम कहते हैं weighted average call rate. And remember, it was a part of monetary policy and control of inflation in the present scenario. So as the call rate inches above the repo rate, it would signal that liquidity is deficit. So call rate is higher than repo rate, then there is liquidity deficit, and what RBI will do, it will pump more money into the market so as to avail the liquidity. Second, when the call rate is lower than the repo rate, first is CR is greater than RR, it means there is liquidity deficit, so RBI pumps the money into the market. Second, when the call rate is lower than the repo rate, then there is surplus of liquidity in the market, then what RBI does, it sucks the liquidity from the market. तो मार्केट से लिक्विडिटी वापस लेने के लिए क्या करेगी? RBI SLR बढ़ा देगी. Now similarly, the call rate is below the repo rate, then there would means the banking system has surplus liquidity. In that case the central bank operates to suck out the liquidity, यानी कि RBI, that is central bank, will suck out the liquidity through its operations. Now next is insurance penetration and insurance density. We saw that after the independence period there was a rise in the insurance sector. So various sectors which provide the security to the people for survival in terms of pandemic situation, in terms of war, in terms of diseases, in terms of death, in terms of casualty. अगर आपके पास इंश्योरेंस है तो आप सिक्योर्ड मानते हैं अपने आप को, and you can claim for that insurance. So insurance density was quite high during that fiscal year due to the pandemic impact. So कोविड पैंडेमिक से क्या हो गया, इंश्योरेंस बढ़ गया, लोगों ने ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा पैसे इंश्योरेंस में इन्वेस्ट किए to make their future secure. So insurance penetration is measured as the percentage of insurance premium to GDP, यानी कि insurance premium upon GDP into 100 equals to insurance penetration. Remember this formula. So दोस्तों हम यहाँ पे कोशिश करेंगे ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा चीज़ों को फार्मूला और मैथमेटिकल इक्वेशंस के द्वारा समझने की, जिससे आपको ये लॉन्ग टर्म काम आए और मेंस में आप इसको इलेबोरेटिव वे में लिख सको और कैलकुलेट कर सको. Now insurance density is calculated as the ratio of premium to the population. How much premium, यानी कि LIC सपोज करते हैं, LIC ने कितना प्रीमियम सेंड किया है फॉर ए पार्टिकुलर density of population is called as insurance density. Okay, से याद रखेंगे. Now what is factoring? Another important term. So factoring is important source of liquidity worldwide, especially for MSME, again micro स्मॉल एंड मीडियम इंटरप्राइजेज जब अपने शेयर्स को लिक्विडेट करती हैं इन टर्म्स टू गेट द मनी बैक फ्रॉम द मार्केट्स to the factors. So what are the factors of NBFC, MSME? MSME के factors होते हैं non-banking financial companies and other such companies which help MSME to grow and function properly, such as small saving banks, small companies and other such organizations. तो MSME companies जब अपने receivables को sell करती हैं to the factors which are NBFCs or other such companies in order to get money, that is called as the factor of that company, and all part of invoiceable can be sold to a factor for getting the money immediately. Remember this point, immediately in the competitive market. यानी कि MSME सेक्टर जिसके पास फंड की क्राइसिस हो रही है, फंड लैक कर रहा है, then it will do sell its shares to other entity or sell 100% of this share to a factor. That process is known as a factoring process. Now, factor then collects payment from the buyer of goods and earn commission on the form of some interest. यानी कि फैक्टर कुछ सेल करता है मार्केट में और उससे उसको क्या मिलता है, कुछ इंटरेस्ट मिल जाता है. Now that interest is again invested for that company in order to survival, or if it want to close then it will be totally liquidated. तो मार्केट को हम ऐसे समझने का प्रयास करते हैं. Now what is policy corridor and what is WACR? So WACR हमने पढ़ लिया अभी. Now what is policy corridor? Government of India has a policy manifestation in terms of CRR and SLR, and the width of this corridor is called as the policy corridor. So हम ग्राफ में देख रहे हैं how Indian economy is doing quite well again after the pandemic situation. So pandemic situation March 2020 to December 2021. In WACR ratio, we saw 4% of 4.3% of WACR, which declines to a level of 3.2 or 3, and again comes back to a level of initial stage like 3.8 to 4. That is WACR. Then MSF rate is doing constant, that is marginal standing facility, यानी कि 4.0% की MSF है, and the reverse repo rate is again constant by. So why government of India or RBI is doing such accommodative monetary policy? Like the pandemic was very vast for 2 years, and in order to balance the impact of that pandemic in terms of barbell strategy, government of India is constantly maintaining 3.35 as reverse repo and 4.0 of repo. So repo rate is that rate at which RBI lend money to the banks. So repo rate और reverse repo rate क्या करता है, इन्फ्लेशन को कंट्रोल करता है. So when there is more money in the market, people has more money for buy something, to have more consumption, to have more economic growth. As the repo rate declines, there is high consumption pattern. Then what government does in order to suck the money, it overthrows the reverse repo rate. Reverse repo rate is that rate at which the banks lend money to the RBI. Okay, or bank keeps certain part of money into their pocket for the RBI. So हम constantly देख रहे हैं RBI ने accommodative stance लिया हुआ है. So accommodative stance is a position in economy when all the sectors of the inflationary tendency are being balanced by the government of India. In order to cater the overall economic scenario, accommodative stance is taken, and this accommodative stance creates the economy to a minimum balanced position. and keep the growth sustained. And also MSME as well as vulnerable sections are protected. This measure is called as accommodative stance. Now in the next slide, show liquidity adjustment facility. So under LAF facility, the repo rate as well as reverse repo rate are balanced, and the CRR and SLR are also balanced. So it repurchased the agreement or banks to lend the RBI using the reverse repo contracts. So when there is high liquidity in the market, then there is the operation of reverse repo rate. By applying reverse repo rate, RBI sucks the money from the banks back. Now the difference between reverse and repo rate seems that the rate at the lower bound of the liquidity adjustment facility corridor and repo as the upper bound. So reverse repo is the lower bound and repo is the upper bound of the facility, and it is also called as the policy corridor, as the both rates help government of India in order to determine the policy parameters. So as it is called as policy corridor. Now G-sec yield. What is G-sec and what is G-sec yield? So global security market covers the lot of percentage in terms of investment and collection of collateral. So it goes from 2017 chart, we saw it was 6.5%, and it again high rates to high level of 8.3, again declining to very minimum level to around 5.8, and again there was a rise in the beginning of 2022 January. It means that G-sec yield is rising in terms of Indian economy. So भारतीय अर्थव्यवस्था धीरे धीरे विकास के रास्ते पे ग्रोथ शो कर रही है, and there is a rise of G-sec yield rising. So ये ट्रेंड आपको शो करता है that there is rising in the G-sec yield. You can quote it in your essay as well as mains point of view. Remember this data. Now, what is accommodative policy stand? So, when the government thinks that there is a huge pressure over the economy, such as in pandemic situation, तो government क्या करती है? MSMEs को, small industries को, vulnerable sections को support provide करती है, and this is known as the loose credit providing. The process by making loose credit to the market in order to invest in more economic parameters. This is called as accommodative stance, and RBI attempts to expand the overall money supply to boost the economy when growth is slowing. Growth was slowing when there was corona pandemic. The policy is implemented to allow the money supply to rise in line with national income and demand for the money. So it leads to rise in national income and leads to more demand of money in the market. ज़्यादा मनी होगा मार्केट में तो लोग ज़्यादा ही चीज़ें परचेज करेंगे. It will lead to consumption pattern and overall development of economy. This measure meant to make money less expensive. So accommodative substance or stance make the money less expensive and increases the borrow and encouragement more spending, therefore more consumption and more growth of economy. So this chart shows the capital flows and exchange rates at various point of time by the RBI and other indicators. Now changes in reserve shows that how the reserve were totally declining. In first scenario it was near about 7 and 2, then again rise after the post-COVID scenario. It rose to 24 around of data 2022 January, December 2021 we can say. Now policy rate, again it was more accommodative, so it was high to 6.4, and again reduced to 0% in the last 24. Then nominal exchange rate, this data is covered by RBI. So nominal exchange rate seems to quite rise in 5.5% and again declining to 0, again rise to 1. Headline inflation, that means CPI, again rise from 0 to 0.5 and again reduced to a balance point 4. Again there is rise of the scenario 2, again decline to 0. Price level of various commodities. What price level shows? That the prices that are controlled by the government, APMC and other factors in terms of onion, potato and other items that were again on rise during the pandemic. So perishable products and other various luxury products were on such a rise, and the output gap was earlier very high to 0.66% and it reduced to negative, that is -2. This data is very important for your prelims as well as mains point of view.